Thanks very much, everyone, for joining me once again. Thought it was about time we discussed Lahore Qalandars and their not very good tournament at the Pakistan Super League 9. Now, look, I like Lahore Qalandars. I think they've improved over the years after the disastrous first few tournaments. They do a lot for Pakistan cricket in terms of developing players, in terms of their talent hunts. And, they've brought the likes of Haris Rauf to international cricket. So for that, they deserve credit. But looking at the Pakistan Super League this time around, 2024, PSL 9 on its own, Lahore Qalandars have been an absolute disaster from top to bottom. Yes, there's been a few positives, but not many of them. The positives that spring to mind are Rassie van der Dusen. He deserves a lot of praise. He carried that batting lineup. His numbers, phenomenal numbers. He's amongst the top scorers in the PSL. He averaged 72.80, strike rate of 154.89. To manage that in a team that has only won one game so far is incredible. He's a world-class batter. He just seems to be getting better and better for South Africa. He's a fantastic T20 cricketer. He's somebody who goes into every tournament, every match, every competition and gives his all. He deserves praise. As I say, he was the standout performer. Obviously, Lahore Qalandars have lost him now because he's needed in South Africa domestic cricket, but he deserves praise for his performance. The other guy who I think deserves a little bit of praise is Saj Sadiq. Now, he's been waiting for his chance year after year. He's either not been picked to the Pakistan Super League or he's been picked and not given many chances. This time around, Qalandars have given him that opening spot and he's managed 241 runs to date, average of 40, strike rate of 136.15. Those are good numbers. Again, in a struggling batting lineup, and especially with an opener like Fakhar Zaman, who's his partner at the top of the order, and he's been absolutely terrible this tournament. For Saj Sadiq to do so well, as I say, as an opener, when his partner's been struggling so badly, he deserves a lot of praise. The third guy who I think deserves some credit is Jahandad Khan. Now, I must admit, I've not heard much about this guy. And when I've watched him, I like what I see. I think he's a good athlete. He's taking good catches in the field. His batting, 88 runs. Okay, not many, but he's been coming down low down the order. His strike rate is incredible, 187.23, and he hits a long ball. He's one of those dangerous batters who can come in and smash the bowling to all parts. Looks comfortable against pace, looks decent against spin as well. And his bowling has been expensive for Lahore Qalandars, but he's got a decent action. He looks a bowler who can improve, and I think he's more than useful as an all-rounder. And considering it's his first PSL, I think he's been a breath of fresh air for Lahore Qalandars. And that's where the positives end, I'm afraid. Not many positives at all. Those three guys who I've just mentioned, they deserve a lot of credit. They've carried Lahore Qalandars at times. Fakhar Zaman, where do we start with him? 103 runs, average of 14.71. Strike rate of 101. Is this really Fakhar Zaman's numbers, you'll be wondering? He's one of the reasons why Lahore Qalandars have struggled. He's been one of their bankers over the years. One of the guys who, he's going to score either a century or close to a century, score 50s, hit the opposition bowlers out the park and disrupt their plans. This time around, he's not done any of that. He's just not been the player that we're used to seeing. I'm afraid that Fakhar Zaman has to take a lot of the blame for Lahore Qalandars' disastrous performance this time around. Simply not good enough. He's looked a pale shadow of the player that we know. Who else? Well, I look at some of the matches and the selections and the thinking and the planning and the philosophy of Lahore Qalandars. You've got somebody like Kamran Ghulam, who is a very good cricketer, whether it's batting or in the field. He's somebody who deserves a chance. How many chances has he had at PSL 9? One. He's had one match, and then he was dropped. Now, where's the thinking behind that? Surely a player needs a few matches, 3 or 4 matches, give them a decent run, give them a chance to show what they can do. You play him once, he bats a few balls, and then they drop him. What's going on there? Akib Javed, what's the thinking? Shaheen Afridi, what you thinking there? Give the guy a proper chance. Abdullah Shafiq. We all know what Abdullah Shafiq can do. Yep, he's a fantastic batter in all formats. We've seen him do well for Pakistan. And he's somebody who oozes class, no doubt about it. He's somebody who can play shots all around the park, and we know what he's capable of. This time around, 3 matches, and then he's out the team. Why pick a player? Why select him if you're only going to give him 3 chances? It's not good enough. Again, you look at the planning. Then moving on to the overseas selections. Overseas picks are fundamental in the success of a PSL team, of any franchise really. You get your overseas picks right, you get the right balance of your overseas players, and you stand a very good chance of winning a tournament. This time around, Lahore Qalandars, let me read some of these numbers out. Shai Hope, 3 matches. David Visa, 2 matches so far. Linda, 3 matches. Tucker, 1 match. So between them, they've played 9 matches, these overseas players. What's going on? What is the thinking? Why pick players, overseas picks? We question some of those overseas picks anyway, but what is the planning? What are your tactics? What are you actually thinking when you select these overseas players and you only pick them for 1 or 2 matches? David Visa has been an ever present for Lahore Qalandars. He's been crucial to their success, particularly in the last 2 PSLs when they've won the tournaments. This time around, he's hardly had an opportunity. Makes no sense. As far as I'm aware, he's been fully fit. He's been with the squad, and he's just not being picked. Once again, you've got to look at the captain. You've got to look at the coach in terms of what is the planning, what's going on there. Chopping and changing of that starting 11. You're not going to pick the same 11 in a franchise tournament throughout the tournament. We know that. You've got to give opportunities to players. You've got to give chances. You've got to give fair opportunities to players as well. No point bringing them in for 1 match as they have done with Kamran Kalam and then dropping them for the rest of the tournament to carry the towels and drinks. The teams that do well generally in franchise tournaments have strong bench strength, but they have a powerful starting 11. They know what their first 11 is, their strongest 11. Lahore Qalandars, Akib Javed, do you know what your strongest 11 is in this tournament? Shaheen Afridi, what's your best 11 in this tournament? I don't think either of them will know what that is. And that's been another reason why they have flopped so badly. If you don't know your best 11, if you're chopping and changing all the time, you're not sure of who should be batting in which position, who should be picked, which bowlers, then you're going to struggle. And that's what they've done this time around. No consistency in selection at all. It's almost like throw 11 balls up into the air, see what comes down, and we'll pick those players. I'm sure it's not as bad as that. But at times, the selection has just been puzzling, really has been. Shaheen Afridi, got a lot of time for him. A lot of respect for the guy. I think he's a wonderful cricketer. I think he will be a very good T20 captain for Pakistan. I just feel this time around in the PSL, he's been found out. He's had guys like Lisa around him in the past, Rashid Khan, etc., etc. This time around, when the going has got tough, he just hasn't got going. At times, he's been like a rabbit caught in the headlights, and he's been found wanting in terms of decision making, in terms of leadership, and also boosting the morale and performance of his players. He can't bat and bowl for them, but the captaincy is absolutely crucial. And we see Mohammad Rizwan at Multan Sultans getting the best out of some of his average players, and I mean that with all due respect. But Shaheen Afridi doesn't seem to have that capability as yet, but it will come. However, as I say, at PSL 9, I think he's been found wanting as skipper. Zaman Khan has been fantastic over the last few seasons for Lahore Qalandars. This time around, I think his bubble has burst. He's been too predictable. His economy rate of 10 runs and over, it's shocking, really. Yeah, they've played on some flat surfaces, but I think Zaman has been too predictable. Teams have worked him out. I think those subtle changes that he does with his slow deliveries and his bouncers and his Yorkers, I think teams have worked out what he's going to do and when he's going to do it. So he struggled. Akib Javed, is it time to go for him? That's something that needs looking at. Yep, he's won the PSL last 2 occasions. This time around, so far, they've only won 1 game, and that's shambolic. That is just simply not good enough at all. I think the head coach has to accept responsibility for performances. He has to accept responsibility for picking of the squad. And I think in terms of rotating the players, rotating the squad, Akib Javed and Shaheen Afridi have to accept responsibility. If the going's good, then the coach gets praise. If things are not going well, then the coach has to hold his hands up. Me personally, if it was down to me, I'd have Akib Javed as a number 2. I wouldn't have him as the head coach. I think Lahore Qalandars need to look at Quetta Gladiators and the changes that they've made, which have worked so far for them. I think Lahore Qalandars need to possibly bring in some fresh ideas, fresh leadership as coach. And if Akib Javed wants to continue, then maybe he should be either the bowling coach or the assistant coach. I know Lahore Qalandars are very loyal in terms of their players and their coaching staff and management, but I think they need to make some tough calls. They need to make some tough decisions. Now, we know that Rashid Khan's a big loss for them. Don't hide behind that, because they will have known that he wasn't going to be available for much of the PSL. So yes, they're missing a big player. They're missing a star performer. They're missing probably one of the top bowlers in T20 cricket at the moment. But please don't use that as an excuse, because other teams have lost players. Other teams have lost important players as well, who have not been available for the whole tournament. Don't hide behind the Haris Rauf injury as well. Haris wasn't exactly bowling brilliantly before he was injured. And unfortunately, injuries are part and parcel of T20 tournaments. So again, don't use that as an excuse. Others should have stepped up, and they haven't. I just feel that Lahore Qalandars have had no plan B and C. I think the best teams who win tournaments have a plan A, B, C, and sometimes even a plan D. Again, I use the example of Mohammad Rizwan. It's almost like he has 3 or 4 options to bowl every over from 1 to 20. But with Shaheen Afridi and Lahore Qalandars, I just feel that they have been a bit too rigid in their thinking and game plans. And it's just not worked, because other teams know exactly what they're doing and when they're going to do it. And once again, you've got to point the finger at Shaheen Afridi. So overall, I think it's been an absolute disaster for Lahore Qalandars. As I say, I like them. I like the work they do. And, they're one of my favourite teams as well. So it's disappointing to see them struggle so much. And it's disappointing to see them perform so poorly and so many of their important and key players underperform. So I think it's a wake-up call for Lahore Qalandars. Perhaps they came into this tournament thinking, all looking good. We've got most of our players that we've had in previous tournaments, but other teams have risen to the challenge. Other teams have improved. Lahore Qalandars have taken a step backwards. So, as I say, wake up, Lahore Qalandars. It's time for changes. Thanks very much for watching. Take care.